Captain John Harrison looked out the window of the U.S. horizon as it moved through space. The stars looked different here, far from Earth. They were heading to Nexus Prime, a huge space station where aliens from all over the galaxy met to talk about important things. 3 years ago, people from Earth had met aliens for the first time. It was scary but exciting. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Federation. They had 47 different kinds of alien species. Some looked like big lizards. Others looked like floating clouds with eyes. Some had too many arms and legs to count. The Federation had said Earth was too young and simple to join them properly. Humans could only watch and listen, but they could not vote on anything important. This made many humans angry, but they had no choice. The aliens had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans had only just learned how to leave their own planet. John's ship carried 50 people. Most were scientists and diplomats. His assistant was Lisa Martinez, a smart woman who had studied alien languages for 2 years. She could talk to most of the alien species now, which was very useful. "Captain," Lisa said, walking into the main room, "we will reach Nexus Prime in 6 hours. The Federation is having a special meeting about something called the Fringe Worlds." John nodded. The Fringe Worlds were planets far away from the Federation Center. In the past months, these worlds had stopped sending messages. No one knew why. Some aliens thought it was a technical problem. Others worried something bad had happened. "Do we know what the Federation wants to do about it?" John asked. Lisa shook her head. "The messages we got were not clear. But Dr. Richard Blake thinks they might want to ignore the problem." Dr. Blake was Earth's top scientist on the mission. He had been studying the data about the silent worlds. He thought the Federation was making a mistake by not investigating. John walked to the main computer screen. He pressed a button and saw a picture of Nexus Prime. The station was huge, bigger than most human cities. It looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space. Different colored lights showed where each alien species lived and worked. "Have you seen the list of who will be at the meeting?" John asked Lisa. "Yes, all the major species will be there. The Zenthuri will send 5 representatives. They are the warrior species with 4 arms and scales like armor. The Kilari are sending 3 trade masters. They look like tall, thin cats that walk on 2 legs. John had met both species before. The Zenthuri were proud and strong, but not very friendly to humans. The Kilari were more polite, but only cared about making money from trade deals. "What about the smaller species?" John asked. "About 20 other species will send 1 or 2 people each. They do not have much power in the Federation, so they usually just agree with what the big species want." This was something John did not like about the Federation. The stronger species controlled everything. Smaller and newer species had to do what they were told. It reminded him of old stories from Earth about countries that bullied smaller nations. The ship's doctor, Elizabeth Morgan, came into the room. She was reading a report on her computer tablet. "Captain, I have been looking at the medical data from the Fringe Worlds. The last reports show that people were getting sick with something the Federation doctors could not cure." "Is that why the worlds went silent?" Lisa asked. "Maybe," Dr. Morgan said. "But the sickness was not spreading fast. The worlds should have had time to ask for help." John felt worried. Something did not seem right about the whole situation. Why would entire planets stop communicating over a slow-moving sickness? "We will know more when we get there," he said. "Make sure all our equipment is ready. I have a feeling this meeting will be more important than we thought." The U.S. horizon continued its journey toward Nexus Prime, carrying Earth's representatives into a situation they did not yet understand. The U.S. horizon docked at Nexus Prime with a gentle bump. Captain John Harrison felt his stomach jump a little. Even after 3 years of space travel, he still got nervous before big meetings. The airlock opened with a hiss. John walked out first, followed by Lisa Martinez and Dr. Richard Blake. The docking bay was huge. Ships from different worlds sat in rows. Some ships looked like metal birds. Others looked like floating rocks covered in lights. "This way, humans," said a tall alien with purple skin and 3 eyes. It wore a silver robe with symbols that meant it worked for the Federation. They walked through hallways made of smooth white material. The walls showed pictures of different alien worlds. John saw a planet covered in red sand, and another that looked like it was made entirely of crystal. The council chamber was enormous. It had seats in circles that went up like stairs. Each species had their own section. The human section was near the back, in one of the cheapest spots. This was another reminder that Earth was not considered important. "Look at that," Lisa whispered, pointing to the center of the room. In the middle was a large screen that floated in the air without any support. Right now, it showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the fringe worlds that had gone silent. John counted them. 27 worlds. Billions of people lived on those planets. Now, they were all quiet. A deep sound filled the room. It meant the meeting was starting. John took his seat next to Dr. Blake and Lisa. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan, their alien biology expert, sat behind them. "The 23rd session of the Federation Fringe Emergency Committee will now begin," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. A huge alien moved to the speaking area. It looked like a tree with arms and glowing yellow eyes. This was the Chancellor, the leader of the Federation. "Friends from across the galaxy," the Chancellor said in a voice like wind through leaves, "we face a problem with the fringe worlds. They have been silent for 87 standard days." Murmurs filled the room. Different alien languages mixed together into a soup of sound. "What do we know?" asked a Zenthari representative. It was covered in blue scales and had 4 muscular arms. When it spoke, its sharp teeth showed. Dr. Blake leaned forward in his seat. He had been studying this problem for months. "Various medical anomalies were reported," said a Kilari delegate. It looked like a cat that had grown as tall as a human. Its tail moved back and forth as it spoke. The affected population showed symptoms of neural degradation. In simple words, Kate Sullivan whispered to John, their brains were getting sick. "How fast did this sickness spread?" asked a small round alien that looked like a floating bubble. "Slowly," answered the Kilari. "Very slowly. Much slower than a normal plague." John frowned. Something about this did not make sense. If the sickness was slow, why did all the worlds go quiet at the same time? "I propose we implement Protocol 7, said the Chancellor. The room became very quiet. Even John knew what Protocol 7 meant. It meant cutting off all contact with an area and pretending it did not exist. "Wait," Dr. Blake stood up. "That seems extreme. We should investigate first." Several aliens turned to look at him. Some made faces that meant they were annoyed. The Zenthari representative's scales turned a darker blue, which meant it was angry. "The human speaks out of turn," the Zenthari said. "The human observes," the Kilari added. "Humans do not vote." Dr. Blake's face turned red, but he sat back down. John put a hand on his shoulder to calm him. The Chancellor nodded. "We will proceed with the vote. All in favor of Protocol 7 for the fringe worlds." Arms and tentacles and other body parts rose all around the room. John counted them. It was not even close. Almost every species voted yes. "Any opposed?" the Chancellor asked. Only the human section raised their hands. 5 hands against hundreds of alien appendages. "The motion passes," the Chancellor announced. "Protocol 7 is now in effect. The fringe worlds are to be quarantined indefinitely." John felt cold inside. They had just voted to abandon billions of people, and there was nothing he could do about it. After the vote, the council chamber slowly emptied. Different alien species left in groups, talking among themselves. John watched them go and noticed something strange. The aliens did not look happy about the vote. Many walked with their heads down, or whatever they used for heads. Some made sad sounds in their alien languages. "Captain," Lisa Martinez said quietly, "I heard some interesting things while we were sitting." John turned to her. What kind of things? Two Nerian delegates were talking behind us. They said this was the 5th time in 50 years that the Federation had used Protocol 7. They seemed upset about it. The Nerians looked like tall, thin people, but with silver skin and black eyes. They had joined the Federation long before humans had even invented the wheel. Commander Peter Collins walked over to them. He had been watching the alien species during the entire meeting. "Captain, did you notice how they voted?" he asked. "What do you mean?" John replied. "They did not think about it. The Chancellor asked for the vote, and immediately everyone raised their hands. No one asked questions. No one wanted more information." Dr. Blake nodded. "Peter is right. In human politics, a decision like this would take weeks of debate. Here, it took 5 minutes. Lieutenant Amy Foster joined their group. She had been studying Federation history for 2 years. "I have been reading old Federation records," she said. "This is not the first time they have abandoned whole sectors. In the past 100 years, they have done this 7 times. 7 times. Kate Sullivan looked shocked. "How many people were abandoned?" "Billions," Amy said quietly. "And here is the strange part. After they use Protocol 7, the Federation never talks about those worlds again. It is like they forget they ever existed." John felt a chill run down his spine. What happened to those worlds? No one knows. The Federation keeps no records after Protocol 7. The worlds just disappear from all official maps and documents. They talked quietly while other species continued to leave. John noticed that some aliens looked at the human group with what might have been sympathy. Others ignored them completely. "Look," Lisa whispered, pointing across the room. A group of Xanthari warriors was talking with their leader. The leader's scales had turned dark blue again, which meant anger. One of the younger Xanthari seemed to be arguing with him. "I wonder what they are discussing," Kate said. Peter watched them carefully. "The young one keeps looking at us. Maybe he does not agree with the vote." As they spoke, a Kilari trademaster approached them. Its fur was gray with black stripes, and it carried a small computer device. "Humans," it said in accented English. "I am Trademaster Rel Karis. I have watched your species since you joined as observers." John stood and nodded politely. "Trademaster, how can we help you?" "Perhaps it is how I can help you," Rel Karis said, looking around carefully. "Your species asks questions that others have stopped asking. This troubles some of us." "What kind of questions?" Dr. Blake asked. "Questions about why. Questions about how. The Federation has procedures for everything. But procedures are not always right." The Kilari moved closer and lowered its voice. "There are others who think like you humans. We believe the Federation has forgotten its original purpose." "What was its original purpose?" Lisa asked. "To help all species grow and learn together. Instead, it has become a system where the strong control the weak, where asking questions is seen as being disloyal." John looked around the nearly empty chamber. Only a few groups of aliens remained. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked. "Because your species is young enough to still care about truth, and old enough to understand that truth has a cost." Rel Karis handed Dr. Blake a small device. "This contains information you might find interesting. Read it carefully. Share it with those you trust." Before anyone could ask more questions, the Kilari walked away quickly. Dr. Blake looked at the device. It was no bigger than his thumb, and made of some kind of crystal. "Should we look at it now?" Kate asked. John shook his head. "Not here. Too many eyes and ears. Let us go back to our ship." As they left the council chamber, John felt like everything was about to change. The vote today was just the beginning of something much bigger. Back on the U.S. horizon, the human team gathered in a small meeting room. John made sure the door was locked. Lisa checked that no alien listening devices were in the room. Dr. Blake placed the crystal device on the table. It was clear with tiny lights moving inside it like living stars. "I have never seen technology like this," he said. It looks Federation-made, but different somehow. Kate Sullivan leaned forward. Can we connect it to our computers safely? I think so, Blake replied. But we should isolate one computer from the main ship system, just to be careful. Peter Collins brought in a portable computer. It was not connected to anything else on the ship. Blake carefully inserted the crystal into a port. The screen came alive with symbols and numbers. Lisa worked quickly to translate the alien languages. What does it say? John asked. Lisa's face grew pale as she read. Captain, this is a list of all the times the Federation has used Protocol 7. Amy Foster looked over Lisa's shoulder. 7 times in the past 100 years, just like I thought. But there is more, Lisa continued. After each Protocol 7, something called resource reclamation operations began. What does that mean? Kate asked. Blake's fingers moved over the computer keys. Let me see if I can find more details. New documents appeared on the screen. These were harder to translate, but Lisa worked steadily. Oh no, she whispered. Captain, you need to see this. John moved to read over her shoulder. Even in the alien language, some words were clear. Maps showed the abandoned worlds. Dates showed when the Federation had visited them later. They did not abandon these worlds, John said slowly. They emptied them. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Federation has been destroying civilizations, Dr. Blake said quietly. They make them go silent, then blame it on disease or problems. After they quarantine the worlds, they take everything valuable and kill any survivors. Peter Collins sat down heavily. That is genocide. Amy Foster pointed to the dates. Look at the pattern. Every 25 years, they find some reason to eliminate worlds on the edges of their space. Why? Kate asked. Why would they do this? Lisa found more documents. According to this, they only target worlds that are developing too fast, worlds that might become competitors. John felt sick. He looked at his team and saw the same fear in their eyes that he felt. How long until Earth is targeted? He asked. Amy checked the dates. If the pattern continues, we have about 5 years. Unless we do something to upset them sooner, Peter added. Blake found another file. This is even worse. The Kilari trademaster who gave us this device is part of a secret group. They have been documenting Federation crimes for decades. How many species know about this? John asked. At least 6, maybe more. They call themselves the Truth Keepers. Lisa pointed to a list of names. Look, some of the Federation Council members are part of this group. They vote for Protocol 7 in public, Kate realized, but they secretly try to document the truth. John stood up and paced the small room. So we have allies. Good. But what can we do? Earth has maybe 10 ships that can travel between stars. The Federation has millions. We have something they do not, Blake said. What? John asked. We are not afraid to tell the truth. Every other species has adapted to the Federation's lies. They have learned to accept genocide as normal. But we have not. Amy pulled up more data. According to this, the fringe worlds were not sick. The Federation poisoned them. They sent medical aid, Lisa read, but it was actually poison that slowly killed people and made them too weak to communicate. Peter checked some numbers. It says here that Federation ships are already on their way to the fringe worlds. The resource reclamation will begin in 30 days. John stopped pacing. We have to do something. What can we do? Kate asked. We are just observers. Maybe it is time to stop observing, John said. Maybe it is time to speak. Blake looked at the evidence on the screen. If we reveal this, the Federation will destroy Earth immediately. And if we do nothing, John replied, they will destroy Earth in 5 years anyway. At least this way, someone will know the truth. The room was quiet again. Then Lisa spoke. The Federation Council meets again tomorrow to finalize the Fringe World protocols. That would be the time. John nodded. Then tomorrow we find out what one human voice can do against an entire corrupt system. John could not sleep that night. He lay in his bed on the U.S. horizon, thinking about what they had discovered. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the numbers on the screen. Billions of dead people, entire civilizations erased. At 400 hours, he gave up trying to sleep. He got dressed and walked to the ship's mess hall. To his surprise, Dr. Blake was already there, drinking coffee and staring at a computer screen. Could not sleep either. John asked. Blake shook his head. I have been checking our own records, looking for signs. Signs of what? Signs that Earth is being prepared for Protocol 7. John sat down and poured himself coffee. What did you find? 3 months ago, we received medical supplies from the Federation. A gift, they said, to help Earth prepare for membership. John felt cold. The same kind of medical supplies they sent to the fringe worlds. I do not know, but I have asked Dr. Morgan to test them. We should have results by morning. Lisa Martinez walked in, followed by Peter Collins and Amy Foster. None of them looked like they had slept well. Captain, Lisa said, I have been thinking. We need to be smart about tomorrow. If we just stand up and accuse the Federation, they will call us liars. Amy nodded. We need proof that everyone can see. Peter had an idea. The council chamber has display screens. If we could connect the Kilari's device to those screens, everyone would see the evidence at once. How do we do that without the Federation stopping us? Kate Sullivan asked as she joined them. Dr. Blake smiled slightly. I think I know someone who can help. He showed them a message he had received during the night. It was in code, but Lisa quickly translated it. It is from Trade Master Rel Karras, she said. He wants to meet privately before the council session. John checked the time. We have 4 hours. Let us see what our Kilari friend has to say. They arranged to meet in one of the station's neutral areas. This was a place where any species could go without permission from others. It had shops and restaurants for different alien species. The meeting place was a small cafe that served drinks from many worlds. Rel Karras was waiting at a corner table. He looked nervous, his tail moving back and forth. Humans, he said quietly, you have seen the evidence. John nodded. We have. And we understand what it means. Good. Then you know the danger you face by speaking. But you also know the danger of staying silent. Dr. Blake leaned forward. Can you help us show the evidence to the council? Rel Karras smiled, showing his sharp cap-like teeth. The Truth Keepers have been waiting for someone brave enough to speak. We have been preparing for this day. He gave John a small device. This will connect your evidence to the council chamber's main display system. When you activate it, every screen in the chamber will show what you want. How do we activate it without being stopped? Kate asked. You will have allies in the chamber. When the time is right, you will receive a signal. Amy Foster looked worried. What happens after we show the evidence? The Federation military will be angry. Rel Karras' tail stopped moving. That depends on how many species find the courage to stand with you. The Truth Keepers believe that most Federation members do not know the truth. They think Protocol 7 really is about protecting the galaxy. What about the council leaders? Peter asked. Some know, some do not, but all of them are afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of losing power. John looked at his team. Are we really going to do this? Blake nodded. We have to. For the fringe worlds. For the civilizations that have already been destroyed. For Earth. Lisa checked her translation device. Captain, I have been thinking about your speech. You will need to be very careful with your words. Why? Federation law has rules about accusations. If you accuse them directly without proper procedure, they can declare Earth an enemy immediately. Rel Karras agreed. You must let the evidence speak first. Let them see the truth, then ask questions. John stood up. All right. We have our plan. Let us go back and prepare. As they left the cafe, Rel Karis touched John's arm with his paw. "Human captain," he said, "many species will remember this day. Whether you succeed or fail, you will change the Federation forever." Back on the ship, they spent the morning preparing. Dr. Morgan confirmed that the medical supplies from the Federation contained the same slow-acting poison that had been used on the Fringe Worlds. John checked his watch. In 2 hours, the council session would begin. "Are you ready, Captain?" Lisa asked. John looked at his team. They all looked scared but determined. "As ready as I can be," he said. "Let us go make history." The council chamber looked different today. More species had come to watch the final vote on the Fringe Worlds. John noticed that some sections were completely full of aliens he had never seen before. The human delegation took their usual seats near the back. John carried a small bag with their evidence device. His hands felt sweaty, but he tried to look calm. Lisa Martinez sat next to him, quietly translating conversations from other species. Amy Foster and Kate Sullivan were behind them, while Dr. Blake and Peter Collins sat to their left. "I count at least 60 different species here today," Kate whispered. "That is more than usual." The Chancellor moved to the center speaking area. Today it wore special robes that sparkled with silver patterns. "Fellow members of the Federation," it announced, "today we finalize our response to the Fringe World crisis. The Resource Management Committee will present their plans." A tall, thin alien with gray skin and 6 arms stepped forward. This was the head of the committee. John had seen this species before, but he did not know their name. "Honorable Council," the alien said, "we have prepared efficient protocols for the Fringe World situation. Our ships are ready to begin containment operations." Dr. Blake grabbed John's arm. "Containment operations. That is what they call the killing." The committee had continued. "We estimate that full completion will take 47 standard days. All valuable resources will be secured for the Federation's use." John felt sick again. They were talking about murder like it was a business transaction. "Are there any questions before we vote?" the Chancellor asked. A few aliens asked simple questions about schedules and resource types. No one asked about the people living on those worlds. John looked around the chamber. He saw Rel Karis sitting with other Kilari. The Trademaster gave a tiny nod toward the display screens. Then John saw something interesting. In the Nerian section, several aliens were looking directly at him. One of them, an older Nerian with bright silver skin, raised one finger slightly. "Is that the signal?" Lisa whispered. Before John could answer, Peter Collins touched his shoulder. "Captain, look at Section 7. John looked where Peter pointed. 3 Zenthari warriors were sitting very still, but their scales were changing colors in a pattern. Blue to green to silver, then back to blue. Amy Foster leaned forward. "That is definitely a signal. I studied Zenthari color patterns. That combination means truth, and now." John felt his heart beating fast. Around the chamber, he noticed more signs. A group of small, round aliens all turned toward the human section. Several species that usually ignored humans were watching them carefully. "The Truth Keepers are ready," Dr. Blake said quietly. John stood up slowly. The bag with the evidence device felt very heavy. "Chancellor," he said, his voice louder than he expected. The chamber became quieter. Many aliens turned to look at him. "The human wishes to speak," the Chancellor asked. It sounded surprised. "Yes, Chancellor, if I may." There were murmurs around the chamber. Some aliens made sounds of disapproval. Others seemed curious. "Humans observe. Humans do not speak during final votes," said the Zenthari representative with dark blue scales. John took a deep breath. "I understand our position, Chancellor, but I have information that the Council should see before voting." "Information?" the Kilari delegate asked. What information could humans have about Federation business? John reached into his bag and pulled out the evidence device. Several security guards around the chamber moved forward slightly. "Evidence about Protocol 7, John said. evidence about what really happens to worlds that are quarantined. The chamber became completely silent. Even the usual background humming of the station seemed to stop. The Chancellor's colors changed to dark red. "Human, you speak of things you do not understand." "Perhaps," John replied. "That is why the Council should see the evidence. Let the facts speak for themselves." He activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then all the display screens in the chamber came alive. Numbers, maps, dates, documents. The evidence of decades of genocide filled the screens. John heard gasps from many species. Some aliens stood up to see better. Others made sounds of shock in their own languages. "This cannot be true," shouted the gray-skinned committee head. But the evidence was undeniable. Years of Federation crimes displayed for everyone to see. John looked around the chamber. Some species looked horrified. Others looked angry. But no one looked away. "Now," John thought to himself, "let us see what one human voice can do." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of different languages. Some species stood on their seats to see the screens better. Others ran toward the exits. "Turn off those displays," the Chancellor commanded. But the screens kept showing the evidence. Maps of destroyed worlds, lists of killed populations, documents signed by Federation leaders. A Nerian delegate stood up in his section. "This is clearly fake," he shouted. "Humans are trying to deceive us." But another Nerian, the older one with silver skin, stood up too. "No, Tolven, I have seen some of these documents before. They are real." More aliens began speaking at once. A group of small, floating species made high-pitched sounds of distress. The Kilari section was divided, with some members arguing loudly with others. John remained standing, watching the chaos he had created. Security guards moved toward him, but Trade Master Rel Karis stepped in front of them. "Let the humans speak," Rel Karis called out. "Let him explain this evidence." The Chancellor's colors changed rapidly from red to black to purple. Silence. Order. Guards, arrest the human for violation of observer protocols. Wait. A loud voice stopped everyone. The voice came from the Zenthari section. It was their clan leader, a massive warrior with golden scales instead of the usual blue. John had never seen this Zenthari before. "I am War Chief Kafdar of the Zenthari High Command," the golden alien announced. "By ancient Federation law, any member who presents evidence of corruption has the right to speak before judgment." The Chancellor's eyes glowed brighter. "The humans are not voting members. They have no such rights." "The law says any member," Kafdar replied firmly. "It does not specify voting or non-voting." Murmurs of agreement came from several sections. John realized that many species knew Federation law better than the leaders wanted them to. Dr. Blake stood up next to John. "Captain Harrison, tell them what we found." John looked around the chamber. All eyes were on him. He had never spoken to so many aliens before. His voice had to be perfect. "Members of the Federation," he began, "the evidence you see is real. For over 100 years, your leaders have used Protocol 7 not to protect the galaxy, but to eliminate potential rivals." "Lies," shouted the committee head. "The humans seek to divide us." "Then explain this," John said, pointing to the screens. "Why do the ships sent to help the fringe worlds carry weapons instead of medicine? Why are the medical supplies poisoned?" An alien from a species he did not recognize stood up. It had tentacles instead of arms and spoke in a bubble-like voice. "My homeworld received such gifts 50 years ago. We lost millions before we discovered the poison." Another species leader joined in. "Our neighbors, the Vorthan Empire, disappeared after Protocol 7 was used on them. We always wondered why." John saw his opportunity. "The Federation has been telling you these worlds went silent from natural causes, but they were murdered, and Earth is next on the list." The chamber fell silent again. This was worse than chaos. This was the silence of understanding. Lisa Martinez stood up. Captain Harrison speaks truth. We have evidence that Earth has already received the poisoned medical supplies. This is exactly what we expected from humans, the Chancellor said coldly. Creating lies to gain power. This is why they were made observers only. But John saw something the Chancellor did not. Around the chamber, more and more species were standing up. Some held devices of their own. Some pointed at the screens. Some simply faced the center and waited. War Chief Kafdar spoke again. Chancellor, the evidence is clear. The Zenthari demand a full investigation. The Kilari concur, Trademaster Relkaris announced. The Nerians support this demand, said the silver-skinned elder. Species after species announced their support. John counted them. 10, 20, 30. More than half the Federation was standing against their own leadership. The Chancellor's colors turned completely black. You are all fools. You follow human lies. John took a deep breath. This was the moment. I am not asking you to follow humans, John said clearly. I am asking you to follow the truth. The evidence is here for everyone to see. Judge for yourselves what kind of government you want. The chamber fell completely silent once more. But this time, it was not the silence of shock or fear. It was the silence of a galaxy finally hearing the truth. The silence stretched on. John looked around the chamber and saw something he had never expected to see. Fear, not in the smaller species, but in the leaders. The Chancellor's colors kept changing. The committee head's 6 arms shook slightly. War Chief Kafdar broke the silence first. Chancellor, we demand an immediate investigation. This cannot wait, agreed Trademaster Relkaris. Federation ships are already on their way to the fringe worlds. The Chancellor tried to regain control. The Council will not be swayed by human tricks. Then let us vote, said the silver-skinned Nerian elder. Let each species decide what they believe. John felt Dr. Blake touch his arm. Captain, look at the screens. The evidence was still playing. Now it showed communication records between Federation leaders, secret meetings, plans to cleanse the edges of Federation space every 25 years. I recognized these communication codes, called out a small, turtle-like alien. These are real Federation command frequencies. The dates match historical records too. Added a species with crystal-like skin. The committee head tried one last time. Even if some of this is true, it was necessary. The fringe worlds were becoming too powerful. They threatened Federation stability. Gasps echoed through the chamber. John stepped forward. So you admit it is true. You admit to genocide. I did not say that. The committee head stammered. But the damage was done. Several species began talking at once. The word genocide spread through the chamber in many languages. War Chief Kafdar's scales turned bright battle silver. The Zenthari withdraw all support for Protocol 7. The Kilari demand immediate recall of all Federation fleets, announced Relkaris. One by one, species after species declared their position. The Nerians called for new leadership. The crystal-skinned aliens demanded reparations for previous victims. The turtle-like species wanted a complete investigation of all past Protocol 7 events. John counted the votes in his head. More than 40 species had turned against the current Federation leadership. Only 6 or 7 still supported them, and those were the ones who had always been in power. The Chancellor looked around the chamber desperately. Then it did something that shocked everyone. It laughed. You think this changes anything? The Chancellor said, its voice now cold and dangerous. You think knowing the truth will help you? We have the largest military in the galaxy. We have controlled trade routes for centuries. You cannot stop us. The chamber fell silent again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of species realizing they might have to fight for freedom. War Chief Kafdar stepped down from his section. He was huge, even by Zenthari standards. Try it, he said simply. Other aliens began moving. The Kileri started pulling out communication devices, probably contacting their trade fleets. The Nerians formed groups, whispering urgently. John realized he had started something much bigger than he planned. This was not just about the fringe worlds anymore. This was about the future of the entire galaxy. "Stop," a new voice called out. "There is no need for war." Everyone turned to look. It was a very old Zenthari, even older than Kafdar. Its scales were pale with age. "I am Elder Vectar," the ancient alien said slowly. "I was here when the Federation was founded. The original charter has laws for exactly this situation." "What laws?" the Chancellor demanded. "Laws that allow for emergency dissolution and reformation when corruption is proven," Elder Vectar replied. "If 2/3 of member species agree, all current leadership positions become void." The chamber buzzed with excitement. Species began counting votes. John watched as groups formed and urgent discussions began. Within an hour, the count was complete. Over 45 species supported dissolution. The Federation would be rebuilt from the ground up. The Chancellor and its supporters tried to object, but they were vastly outnumbered. As the session ended, John found himself surrounded by aliens from many species. "Human Captain Harrison," Elder Vectar said, "you have given us a great gift." "What gift?" John asked. "The courage to remember what we were supposed to be," War Chief Kafdar answered. Later, alone with his team on the U.S. horizon, John looked out at the stars again. They looked the same, but everything was different. "Did we really do it?" Kate Sullivan asked. "The investigation teams are already on their way to the fringe worlds," Dr. Blake reported. "The Federation fleets have been ordered to stand down." "And Earth?" Peter Collins wanted to know. "Full voting membership has been granted immediately," Lisa said with a smile. "As an apology." John smiled too. One voice really can change everything. Amy Foster looked up from her computer. "Captain, we are receiving hundreds of messages from across the galaxy. Different species wanting to establish relations with Earth." "And?" John asked. "And they all start the same way," Amy replied. "They all say, 'Thank you for speaking the truth.'" John looked out at the stars once more. This time, they looked like the beginning of something wonderful.